Hello, everyone. Welcome to our final discussion in Module 2. This is going to be more of just a general information discussion. There is no outline. There are no images for me to show you. Over the course of the semester, I'm going to be asking you to do some assignments, doing some a little bit of research. And I just want to briefly go over a few websites that might be of real help to you instead of just sort of Googling randomly on some of this. So I just want to just show you these, and I'm going to keep this very, very brief. Again, this is more just general information for you guys. So let me go to, in no particular order here, I'm just going to bring these up just so that you can see what these actually look like. The first website that I might recommend is part of what is called the WMO, which is the World Meteorological Organization. They are part of, they're sort of a branch of the United Nations, and they have offices in Reston, Virginia, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. They're in Melbourne, Australia, and they're also in Moscow, Russia. And it's a pretty good source of information because, again, they collect data from all over the world. This is not just a US thing or a European thing. And so, of course, if you go in here, if you go into the search engine on the website, you can go ahead and just type something like climate change, and let's see what we can actually come up with here. And so what will happen is that what might be of help to you in the future when you see some of the assignments. So you can kind of come over here to the left and you'll see sort of, advanced searches. So here's climate change, and they have all these different articles on here. It can become a little bit overwhelming, so don't get too deep into this website, because it's kind of like going down a rabbit hole. You can keep going farther and farther and farther into this, but it is a very good site. Okay, and much of the information, some of it is kind of technical, and that's not to insult anybody's intelligence here. They get into a lot of physics and stuff, but you'll also find some general articles on climate change and some of the data that they collect. They collect data from almost every country on the planet. All right. They also have a tremendous amount of atmospheric sensors in the ocean. So sometimes if you're ever going on a cruise, you might come across in the middle of the ocean these buoys that sort of float out in the middle of nowhere. A lot of times they may be tied to the WMO. So they are just a wealth of information out there for you guys. So again, if you just sort of go into World Meteorological Organization, the website will come up, you go into the search engine, and then you can find your information there. Whether you type in global warming or climate change, it's just a really good website for you guys, okay? So the second website that I'm gonna highly recommend to you guys, and hopefully I don't click on the same thing. Okay, so here is the National Climate Data Center. I know it says NOAA up here. There is a separate NOAA website I'm going to show you in a second. But it's commonly referred to as NCDC, which stands for the National Climate Data Center. They're located in North Carolina, and they are nothing more than a repository. That means they collect nothing but weather data from the United States. This data can come from academic research. This comes from atmospheric science scientists. This comes from National Weather Service. It's really, really a great source of data. When I was in graduate school, I lived on this website, collecting data. Also, I could contact them. They would send you PDFs full of data. That's a little bit beyond the scope of what I'm going to be asking you guys to do, but just nonetheless. So again, if you go into their search engine, all right, so I'm just typing in here, of course, climate change. All right, and you can see there's just all sorts of information here. Again, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And so in this case, some of this data is coming from NOAA. And so here you go, climate change, global temperature. And so again, it's going to be a great source of information for you guys. Probably for our discussion, it might be a little bit better than the WMO, but I just want you to see the WMO because it is a global approach. We know that global warming, climate change, of course, is going to take a global approach to it. So that's kind of where the WMO is at. For our purposes, the National Climate Data Center might be a little bit better information for you on more local stuff, okay? So anyway, the third one, and I told you this would be very, very quick, but I do want you to see it, all right, is specifically the NOAA site. Now, one thing a little bit later on in the semester, when we talk about, environmental impacts with this, because that's part of the class, this would probably be a good website for you guys, looking at things like forest fires. I think you all know that, the threat of fires just seems to be increasing every year, whether it's the fact that temperatures are warmer or more of a drought, the soils are completely desiccated. But this is a great website as well that will help you out in terms of looking at, things like environmental impacts as well. So again, this is just very, very simple. It's going to look very similar to the NCDC there that I showed you a second ago. Okay, so up here in the search, you would hit climate change and here you go again, but they do have a little bit different information as well, okay? So you could just click on something like climate change and, they'll talk about, you'll see here, as you can see that I have in here, the fourth warmest year on record, and the fires that are associated with this, but also sort of extreme weather, things like tornadoes and things of that nature. So anyway, so this would be a good help for you if you're looking for something specifically like environmental impacts of climate change, okay? And last but not least, okay, I just want to show you one other one here. And this is something that a lot of people don't really associate with global warming, climate change, but they are very much involved in this, and this is NASA. NASA does a lot of stuff. They're really our big source of information for satellite data. So of course, you get these different satellites out there. Something called GOES, G-O-E-S, is a satellite that is used a lot in looking at weather and climate patterns. It sits about 23,000 miles up off the Earth's surface, and it's a stationary satellite. So as the Earth rotates, it's just constantly taking pictures of the Earth. And so a lot of times they're looking at what is taking place with the oceans. As you all know by now, oceans play a very big role in this. So the Goddard Institute, that is part of NASA, is very big into climate change. But this is well worth looking into as well, as just how we collect data, okay? So the last thing I want to say to you guys with this is that data becomes very important in a topic like climate change. It's very important. Many of you might be getting into degrees that you're going to be having to do some research. And you're always going to be sort of criticized or, your sources of data are always going to become very, very, very important. So you always want to be looking for good, reliable sources of data. My personal opinion with this, NASA, NOAA, WMO, the National Climate Data Center, just being a repository, I don't really believe that these guys have a dog in the fight from the political aspect of this. These guys are just researchers. These are just sources of information saying, hey, here is the information that we've been able to glean in our research about climate change, about global warming. So anyway, and that's just my take on this. One other thing with the data that you want to keep in mind as well is that sometimes you guys might be looking for something, and let's say that it's 2022, all right, and you're typing in and you're looking for climate data, and the most recent data they might have might only be 2019, 2020. And you might think, okay, so why isn't this updated? It's not that it's not updated, it's that what you have to understand, what happens in a lot of research, and if you guys are getting into any career that's going to require research, you're going to become very familiar with this. When data is collected, is that data is always scrutinized. And so what will happen is that as scientists, as research delivers this data to climate data centers, or the data that NASA or NOAA or somebody collects, they want to make sure that it's correct, that, that it's good, solid, reliable data. And that actually takes quite a while for people to go through to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. So when I ask you to do a little bit of research, I understand that you may not have something that's right current today. That's okay, all right? Because as you know, climate is just based on patterns. So if your data is 2018, 2019, 2020, whatever the case may be, perfect. If that's the only data that you could find, okay? So I promised you this would be very, very short. These are 4 very good websites for you guys over the course of the semester in here. Utilize them. They have lots of information. I'm going to ask you to cite your sources of where you find your data. These are really good starts, okay? So instead of just randomly Googling stuff, you might want to start with this and see where this takes you, okay? So again, I'll be checking back with you here in Module 3. We'll be moving on. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know, okay? So have a good day. Take care. Bye.